And here we go.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Mental Health in Tech. This is a bit of a roundtable, if you will, although it's a bunch of rectangular boxes, but we're going to pretend we're all around a round table. And so, again, today, me, my co-host, Skulk Fenter, and then we're joined by three guests, no less. Jeff, which if you've listened to some of the past episodes, you would have heard before. If you've listened to the Mechanical Ink podcast, which is now somewhere in the ether, but you can still find old episodes of it, you would have heard Hida and also Miriam, because I've had them on that podcast. But there was this interesting conversation that kind of spurred on Hackhyderm, Mastodon, whatever you want to call it, the Fediverse, around a post that Miriam wrote that we'll get into, and we'll use it as a stepping off point for this conversation, as it kind of is why this conversation is partly happening. She shared a very, very good post that everybody should go read afterwards. We'll link in the description. And Jeff, Hida, some other people joined in and said, I would love to talk about this more. I would love to talk about this more. And I interjected myself in the middle and said, we have a podcast and we can talk about it there. Then eventually I reached out to Miriam, and then when she was in, I started pulling in the other people, and here we all are together, Jeff, Hida, and Miriam, myself, and Skulk Fenter. And we're going to talk about some very topical points, especially for the time we're in, end of March 2025. But all these topics have been relevant in the past and will continue to be relevant in some shape or form in the future. So I think this is the evergreen content, but it's especially relevant right now. So with that, I'm going to zip and just give my mental health update. I will hand it over to my co-host to do the same, and then we'll start going through our guests. So I'm not doing too bad. Had an interesting surprise at work that is going to change things for me. The world economy is one of the things that's changed in the last couple of months, not for the better, but for the worse. And it's impacting people and companies in different ways. Won't go into it too much, but the company I work for is among the companies not doing so great at the moment. And I've decided that even though I'm not laid off or anything like that, it's one of those things where the last year and a half was rough and a lot of uncertainty. I was also laid off once from a startup. And I'm going to be proactive this time and not say, I'm going to write it out with the company and we'll be good, because I do have a family and people relying on me. So I'm instead being proactive and kind of putting my feelers out. But I mean, I have time. I still have a job, and at least the people are they're very transparent and open about it. And I really appreciate that. I hate it because I like doing interviews is like one of the things I like least in the world. And now a tiny child has joined us and we're all distracted. And so, it's not something I was planning on doing so soon. And I really like the company I'm at. I really feel bad about them being impacted like this. It's a great bunch of people that we're doing really good work, but it is what it is, capitalism and all the things that's happening. So, I'm doing okay. I would prefer not to have to go and look for a new job, but here it is. So could be better, could be much, much worse. There's some other people that has been laid off, so I'm not one of them. So in all, I'm like floating somewhere in the middle and trying to do things that make me happy, like learning new stuff about CSS and JavaScript and HTML and keeping my mind off the other things. So yeah, pretty good. I think I'm in a good mindset for this conversation, which is probably a good thing. But with that, I'm going to hand over to other Skulk Fenter.
Yes, a very sick Skulk Fenter. I also just pronounce my surname in a very English manner, Skulk Fenter. It's Skulk Fenter. And also just for a bit of context, like the random comment that other Skulk, or original Skulk, I guess now, made about, a little child has joined us. My kids just ran past the screen. Obviously, you couldn't see that because this is audio, so I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, I don't know. Doing okay, I guess. I'm a bit sick. Like I think it's kind of fluish, and mm, doing okay mostly. Had a really rough patch yesterday and the day before, um, where you get into that space where everything just feels like so unbearable, and you're just like, I I really don't know how I'm going to keep this up for how many years, days, weeks still. But yeah, I guess then you snap out of it a bit. I'm a bit better now. The being sick doesn't really help with that, but um, yeah, it's like I don't know, like I'm kind of oscillating a bit between like feeling a bit of nihilism creep back in again. So um, hopefully this conversation will kind of set me straight, or it'll just make it way worse. Chances of the latter is pretty high, but yeah, I think it's just helpful to find, like, I think sharing kind of one's own fears, and also kind of um, seeing that those are shared fears between people. I think that helps a bit as well. But yeah, Skulk, I don't know. You've been in a very good mood the last couple of episodes. You better watch out. You're going to disqualify yourself from this. We're going to have to find a new co-host. Like, you can't be this at peace and happy all the time. But yeah, so that's it. Like, if I were to summarize it, like, I'm just emotionally confused, I think. Just feeling a lot of things and unable to draw like a common thread through it. But yeah, it is what it is. And yeah, then I'm happy to hand over to Jeff. Let him kind of give a bit of an update on his side, and maybe I think it's also just worth just doing a quick intro of who you guys are as well, very shortly, for those that haven't listened to any of the prior episodes.
Sure. Hi, my name's Jeff. I am editor over at CSS Tricks and over at Smashing Magazine as well. And I have been on this podcast before and had a great time with it. In fact, I had such a great time that we had to split it up into two-parter because I just yabbered on way too long about X, Y, and Z and whatever else there was. So that definitely won't be the case here. But yeah, checking in on mental health. Well, geez, it's been about a year since the last time I checked in here on this podcast. But for me, my mental health journey is continuing in twists and turns and weird ways. My journey is going to be taking an interesting turn this in the next couple of weeks, where I start ketamine therapy. Which will be interesting. I've done a lot of research and reading on it, and I'm very nervous about it. But I also see the potential and possibilities of how it can be, effective in helping with long-term chronic depression. So I'm very excited about that, but also extremely nervous. But as far as, like more in the weeds, as far as what I've been thinking about lately, it's a lot of it will have to do with this conversation. It'll have to be, like where I feel my place is in, not just in life, but in my job, in this culture. I'm just like you. Let's see, it's going to be other Skulk in this episode. Yeah, I'm kind of confused about my own feelings about things, and existentially, I feel really vulnerable when it comes to knowing where I'm going to be, even in the next 5 years or 10 years, or gosh, can I even daydream that far ahead? A lot of my thoughts have been occupied by retirement and thinking through what the heck my future self is going to look like. And I know we can't project things in the future, but my brain is just wired to think that way. And sometimes I get these fixated seasons of just worry about what's going to happen in the next umpteen years. And this is one of those seasons. So that's currently where I'm at, if that makes any sense.
Cool. Yeah. And I think then we can move on to Miriam. I'm just going according to the way it's organized on my screen. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I hope that new therapy works for you. Yeah. How am I doing? Mental health. It's real up and down. I'm finding ways through. I took social media off my phone so I couldn't doom scroll. I only interact with it through the computer, which means mostly just at work. And I've been doing a lot of pottery, which I find extremely meditative and something to do with my hands, something to do creative, something that feels useful. I'm mostly taking assignments from friends. Hey, I need this thing, and then I can go make it for them. This weekend, I decided not to go into the pottery studio. That was my decision. And then I was grumpy about it. But yeah, I had a good evening with friends last night. And yeah, I don't know. I sort of think about three main approaches through. Is it three? There's the finding the joy is one of them. And that's like the time with friends, the time in the pottery studio. There's the doing something proactive, reminding myself that I have agency in the world. So, maybe going to a protest tonight, joining up with mutual aid organizations. Yeah. And then there was probably a third. Oh, I don't know. But I think, figuring out what I want from work, what work can be, so that it's not just something I escape from, but it's something that I can do and feel healthy about. So I've been putting a lot of thought into that, and I'm lucky to have a really just excellent team at Oddbird, very supportive people. So, I guess that's how I'm doing. Don't look up. If you don't look up, nothing is scary.
Don't look down either.
Yeah.
But maybe just also give a bit of an overview of kind of like professionally, kind of what you do.
Sure. Yeah, I do front-end development broadly. Oddbird is an agency that I started with my brothers, and we now have a team of 6 or 7. I never remember. So we're doing client work, and then I also work on CSS itself at the CSS working group, and do a lot of speaking. So I think I'll be talking to Jeff again tomorrow, maybe. At the Smashing Meets, and those are the things I do. A lot of CSS.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know Miriam that well, like I would probably go as far as to say we have her to thank for a lot of kind of the form that CSS is today. A lot of the movement in terms of specification and features and whatever is you'd be surprised if you follow that thread long enough, you're going to reach Miriam in some way. But yeah, cool. So Hida, is it pronounced Hida?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So how I'm doing sort of mentally, maybe I'll go into that after. I'll quickly say what I do before I forget that. So I kind of work in between sort of front-end development, design systems, and web accessibility, kind of the combination of those things. Mostly today, in my current job on web standards related to that. So I spend a lot of time on the group that does WCAG, the web content accessibility guidelines, and other kind of standards related to accessibility. And then I do a bunch of like public speaking around that, and also blogging, which is fun. Like it's fun to share knowledge. And yeah, I'm doing sort of, I need to separate how I'm doing from sort of personally and how I'm doing as someone working in tech. So personally, I'm pretty good at the moment. I find a lot of joy in I've been buying more tickets to see live music. I've been enjoying that a lot. I am in this choir that I've been performing this weekend, so that was a lot of fun. Like we had lots of fun with the audience and like with ourselves. So lots of making fun in the arts. And yeah, that's good. Not been looking up, I guess, there. But then when I do, like when I realize sort of what sector I'm in, that's hard. It's hard to realize that you're like in the tech sector, and the tech sector are the ones who are doing the things that are bad for environment, and the things that are bad for democracy, and the things that are bad for sort of the world in general. Like this wasn't what I joined up for. So when I kind of got into tech, it was this kind of idealistic world. No, maybe I'm romanticizing it, right? But at least my first website was just kind of like, oh, this is fun. We're having fun together. And there were times where I had fun professionally, kind of working on websites and like trying out new CSS and stuff like that. It's increasingly hard to kind of watch this industry going like, we don't really care. I feel like the caring is not distributed evenly. So like there's people who care. Lovely community that you can find on places like Mastodon, in rooms like this. But then like if you look at LinkedIn, everyone's there, right? Not just a bubble. And there's just so many people who are sort of applauding the tech leaders. No, Musk is doing great stuff, and it's just really hard to watch. Because yeah, I thought we all kind of agreed on sort of basic ethics, and that's been maybe the hardest thing for me recently. That I'm realizing that not everyone has the same ethics, or like looks at things from an ethical lens. And I should have realized I'm a trained philosopher, so I have an ethical lens. It's maybe unfair, but I start to realize like that everyone looks at things quite differently. And yeah, we have a lot of people in the industry who maybe don't look at things through an ethical lens first. And yeah, it's been challenging to see sort of where we're heading. And yeah, I'm trying to look like at the good people in the room, and also maybe spreading the word about what's good and bad in tech, because maybe it is hard to recognize for people. And yeah, maybe we can all help one another to kind of think things through, and like what are the right things to do, because I can't pretend that I know, right? But yeah, maybe we don't talk enough about sort of ethics in tech, or talk about it in a superficial level. So yeah, tech difficult, personal life quite okay.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And also I can, like, a lot of that rings true for me, because that's why I joined Mozilla like 13 years ago now, maybe 14. I mean, I'm not there anymore, but because that's also why I left. Because the reason I joined, that culture disappeared within the company as soon as money entered stage left, and it became the primary objective, because the rest of the world started changing and putting the squeeze on Mozilla, and they were like, crap, we have to make money, right? Shit. We never really thought about that. And then they were like, okay, which products do you have that we can squeeze? And there's some products I have a very strong affinity for, and you could even say love, that I would even not see even as a product, but more as a service to developers over the world, MDN, if you haven't thought yet. And seeing that being turned into a cash cow was a little painful, a lot painful. And, I think in the last episode, Skulk mentioned the fact that, sometimes you need to stick around, because maybe if you have agency, or you have some, maybe over years, you've built up the ability to kind of influence things, you kind of have a responsibility to stay and not leave, and kind of push back against things. And I did that to the point where I realized, like, I was Sisyphus pushing a boulder up the hill only to reach the top and it rolling back down, trying again, right? I'm not going to get it over the hill. I'm just not. And I couldn't stand by and just be like, look at the fire and be the little dog saying, this is fine, because it's not. So I had to leave, but I think it's that thing where I thought I was surrounded by people that all felt and believed the same thing, that we can use the web to do good. We can use the web to empower people. We can use the web to create opportunity for people. The web can be a great fun place that we can all create together and all these kinds of things. And let's make the web good and accessible and include people. And then I realized, like, it was me and a couple of people that felt that way. And then the people started leaving. And later on, I was like, it's me that feels this way. And then, you kind of jump ship and you're like, okay, I'm out. And you feel bad about it, but at the same time, you do feel powerless and you feel like, I can't stand by and watch the ship go down. So I'll have to jump and try build a new ship maybe. And that's why it's so sad with the company I'm at the moment. I feel like there's a lot of that there. And now this ship feels like it's going down for different reasons, for financial reasons, not people inside the company losing their way or anything. So I feel a lot of the same things that you just said there, Hida, that it feels like I joined tech because I thought we could build great stuff that can do good in the world. And now I'm not too sure where we're going with all of this. And I know there's people that still want to do this, right? They're out there. It's just to connect them all and say, and I'm seeing some hints of it. People doing just stuff for fun. Just putting up a website that's just silly or something. And it's like, that's cool. Or it's really, they're just doing something cool with CSS, for example, creating art. Like I saw the other day, the dude that made the thing where if you scroll, there's these holographic thingies. So they'd use like a sticky background or something. And when you scroll, it's like a little swallow, and then it scrolls stuff past it. And then it was just like, that's just beautiful. And there's no money at the end of that, right? There's nobody paying for that. It's just, this is just really beautiful. And it's cool that you could do that on the web. But then there's, other things like I've found with client stuff where it's like you talk about the accessibility thing, and then people are like, that's a really hard thing to sell. It's kind of like a money pit. And I'm like, I'm going to have to leave because I'm going to lose it. But I think there's a lot of that going on, right? But I don't want to, it's not the me show. So I wanted
You do need to share a link to the holographs. I need to see this.
I will totally do that.
I'm trying to imagine it in my head. I just heard like a swallow and like
you have to see it.
You scroll down and a swallow appears. Like that sounds like just how the web works.
Of it now.
Yeah,
it's really cool. Once you see it, it's like wow.
Yeah, and I think this is like I think where our last conversation that we had with Kate kind of ended off. I think this is actually a very nice touch point to continue that conversation, because I think like we started talking in the end about, there's especially when it comes to one's mental health, like I think it'd be absurd, especially in 2025, to just completely separate that from what is going on in the external world and in the tech sector and, just politics. Skalk Neertling and I, we're not based in the US, we're based in South Africa, but, it feels like everything is unraveling. I don't know, something happened in the time continuum or something, and everything just started unraveling at once. But so there's that, but then on the other hand, it's like, okay, you also need to take care of yourself, and you need to also be accountable for your own mental health and so forth. But then on that side, there's a danger of over individualizing it and being like, okay, this is a me problem, without being like, no, anyone would feel upset given everything that's going on. But then on the other hand, it's like, it's also very easy to make it a complete external thing, which is like, yeah, if all these other things just change and the world becomes a fair place and, everything is set right, then I'll be happy. which also isn't, I guess, a useful approach. Yeah.
Can I suggest something in between those, which is
Please go ahead.
Which is communities. So taking care of each other's mental health, even in a broader context that is scary or dangerous or whatever, but taking care of each other in smaller communities.
But I find that even then, and sorry, like I don't want to hog the conversation, but I do think this is very topical to an experience I had maybe 2 weeks ago or a bit longer, where I'm trying to keep it vague, but I was having a discussion with someone in a professional capacity, and like I don't know, like I don't know whether I was just being what would be the word, overly concerned or whatever, but I kind of like, after that conversation I kind of felt like so like our relationship is purely professional, so like we don't have a personal like relationship that much, but like I left that conversation feeling a bit concerned about their mental health and their mental well-being. And so then I was like, okay, cool. So what do I do now? Like, so I know some other people that know that person on a more personal level, and I kind of just messaged them and saying like, this is very weird and whatever. Like, and maybe it's nothing or whatever, but like I'm a bit concerned about this person's mental health, and maybe just check in with them and whatever. And I messaged on LinkedIn, and then I didn't get a response, and I saw the person that I messaged kind of like has been active on LinkedIn since, and it might just be as simple as they saw the message and they thought like, okay, I'll reply later, and then they forgot about it and they thought they replied. Like sometimes it's something, but like it's almost like immediately you're kind of you're stepping out of kind of these very established ways of interacting with one another, and and you feel really like vulnerable and being like, am I being stupid? Am I going to insult someone? Am I going to be like, is that person going to get mad if they find out that I got in touch with someone that knows them personally? And it's just like, man, like, and that entire thing like just rattled me actually so much. So it's also like, I think like because the wider society, like because there's nothing to model kind of how to care about other people's mental health, and as Miriam, as you mentioned, in a community there's nothing really that we can model that on. So it's like almost whenever you try and do that, you're kind of striking out on your own, and you're kind of in the weeds and trying to like figure out, what now? Where do I go now? Am I crossing line? Am I being disrespectful here? It's like, like it's tough. Whereas, like with most other interactions, there's a very clear established way of like that's much easier and less kind of emotionally distressing. I don't know if anyone else had any similar experiences at all.
I mean, I can relate to that, but I think it's maybe because I think you hit on something which is the larger society that we live in. So if you look at the bigger community, so to speak, we aren't exactly told to be vulnerable and to be willing to be vulnerable in front of others, because we've painted that as a weakness. And so therefore we hide it, right? We don't show it to other people. So that's why the smaller communities are where you might find this, because these are people that have built up trust, and therefore they feel okay with being vulnerable. They don't see it as being a weakness. And then you also feel more okay about sharing that I think that person is struggling at the moment. Can somebody reach out? Because there's this trust, there's this, I think trust is the thing. So because there's this trust, you can therefore feel more comfortable in sharing and being open and not worrying about side effects, or what do they call it? Like at work, you shouldn't say this thing because there could be this effect that could cause you losing your job or whatever the case may be. In these smaller communities, hopefully we can find the support through trust and therefore being able to be vulnerable.
A lot of the ways that we communicate are pretty alienating themselves too, right? I mean, we're oftentimes just communicating through chat boxes or through little UIs that don't really have any instruction for how we govern, how we interact with each other. And there's a lot of open interpretation to what that looks like. And honestly, that's a lot of what my consternation is when it comes to AI in general, is that we're given this thing that has a utility to it, but we're not sure what that utility is. We have a lot of ideas about what that utility is, and it seems like there's a lot of opportunity in there, but no one's really prescribing what that is. And as a result, we're all getting left behind, so to speak. And that's really where human connections can break down, even if we don't know the utility of of the medium that it is that we're using and what it's intended to be used for. And so, yeah, building trust in a community, I see that too as something that's getting harder and harder because we don't know what those rules are as we become involved in them. And at the end of the day, like, how do we interact with each other? How do we, support each other's mental health in an online capacity, if we're even supposed to do that at all? And where does that leave us, as far as, one-on-one human interactions and making sure that, we're not alienated as people? That's, there's a lot of nuance in there when it comes to the inputs that we're using to interact with each other.
I think that's a really good point, and I haven't considered that. So in my specific circumstance, where so my thing is now I'm wondering, like, did I do the right thing? And I'm obviously no one here probably has any experience with overthinking things. That's that should be so foreign to all of you guys. But sometimes it happens to the best of us. But so now I'm like, being like, should I have done that? Like, as I mentioned, it's probably, just like, oh, he saw the message or whatever, and he just thought he replied and he never replied. But now I'm like, shit, is he like pissed off? Does he feel I was being like, I was now, I don't know, like I'm just like, because it's, once again, there's no model for us to build that interaction on. And now I'm like, did I do something wrong? I don't know. Like, should I have done that? And I'm like, damn it, man. But what's interesting, what you just mentioned now, that kind of resonated with me, is like, it's actually not that there's like, I shouldn't be thinking like, should I have done that? Should I have not done that? It's like the actual medium through which I did it, because like that's the only way I could have reached out to someone, is so foreign in terms of this type of human interaction, that it's like you're trying to do something that is almost against the grain of all the ways in which this medium has been built and so forth. So it is going to feel strange, and you're going to feel like, what am I doing? I don't know how to approach this. And it might have very little to do with actually doing that, and more to do with the fact that the only medium that I had to do that is like, it's actually a very foreign kind of thing to try and do through that medium, which is interesting, and I think a bit reassuring from my side. So thank you for that.
Yeah, when you mentioned whether or not all of us are overthinkers or not, I just want everyone to know that we were all sarcastically shaking our heads around here.
I know. I think that's
my job description, I think.
But so to me now, the question is, so when do we dive into the point of no return, and we start talking about Miriam's blog post? Because I feel like once we open that door, like this conversation is going to go in one direction and there's no coming back. Yeah.
We do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try to, while you guys were introducing yourselves, I try to skim read it quickly. But I think someone might need to give a bit more of a kind of summary that does it justice. Skalk Neertling, I think since you actually brought it up initially, maybe you can do the honors of
I mean,
summarizing it.
I think there's nobody better than the author to do that, right?
Oh,
So-
well played, well played. Slow
I'm
clap.
going to hand it right over to Miriam. And yes, the post in question is tech continues to be political, but also with the subtext, and the politics aren't looking great. So this is kind of what got us all here. So Miriam, please tell us more about how did this come about? Why did you decide to write it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for me, though, there's a difficulty separating the mental health that led to it and the mental health that comes from posting something like that and then dealing with the outcomes or having that vulnerability in the world. It is, I would say, on the one hand, it is a rant against how it's how it feels to me to be in a field that is dominated by a technology that I don't like or care for, which we often call AI. I think in heavy scare quotes.
I was unsure there whether you're going to say JavaScript.
Yeah, JavaScript too. How quickly the tech industry has gotten on board with the politics of, I don't know, let's say fascism, and what it feels like to be dealing with both the direct attacks of that as a trans woman in the US and being in the industry that's backing it, working in tech. Yeah, I am not an AI researcher. So I always feel like there's a little bit of a, like, people want me to, I don't know, back up my claims on, and I'm like, I'm not a journalist, not a researcher. I'm not doing a white paper. I'm not doing research. I am screaming into my blog. And then I'm dealing with the mental health effects of having screamed into my blog and had a lot of people link to it with the word eugenics as the link. Yeah, what is that? I don't know. It's I don't know if there's more to say about the post specifically, in that, you know, it sort of goes through some of my frustrations with all of these conversations about what is the ethics of tech, my frustrations with how many blog posts and podcasts and talks start with the sentence, setting aside the ethical and ecological concerns, as though those are things we can just set aside and then move on. Yeah, it's that's what the blog post is about to me. I don't know if there's more in there that other people to pull out.
So
I think one thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go right ahead. Yeah.
I feel like that someone said it, you have to be vulnerable, and then the people who introduce this technology, they are very powerful, and also like in terms of money and budget that they have to do the white papers and the research, and they are paying researchers, right? They have even ethical departments that they don't really share their ethical guidance with us. It's all like, yeah, we set the ethics aside, and then everyone who kind of follows that, their marketing, also sets the ethics aside. We're not sort of being guided ethically around what products are being produced and kind of forced upon us, that do have very clear ethical implications, as you've shown in your post, right? There's some serious problems with it. So we should set aside the technology really, and not your blog posts.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, one of the things that really resonated with me, Miriam, in your post is just the discussion of exploitation in AI and how it is. I guess the image I got while I was reading through it was, oftentimes we're told, oh, don't bite the hand that feeds you. But oftentimes what it looks like we're doing here when we're interacting with AI is that we're actually feeding the hand that bites us, right? And I think
like that.
I think it really, really stuck with me. And I was rereading your post the other night just to make sure it was fresh in my mind. And I don't know. I think if maybe you could talk a little bit about the exploitation end of that. I think that's really where I start to tailspin a little bit, personally speaking, when it comes to feeling alienated in something that's being actively pushed upon me, but at the same time being in this industry where if I'm not on board with this, I'm getting left behind in a way. And of course, this is where it all, starts to dovetail for me into thinking about the future and retirement and where I'm going as a person. But talking about that exploitation angle, I think is really fascinating because there's something real there to discuss.
Yeah. And again, I'm not the one doing the research. I'm just reading some of the research from people like Emily Bender and Timnit Gebru and others. But I think there's several levels to it. Some of it is it's our writing that's being scraped. And we keep finding out more and more about how much of our writing is being scraped, and even things in books are being scanned and then scraped for the large language models. It's our art that's being scraped for the diffusion image generators. And then that's being sold back to us at quite a high price, sort of shuffled. Our own work shuffled and sold back to us. And we're supposed to want to pay for that. So I think that's one part of it. Another part is there is a lot of human data work that goes into making a training of a model even successful in any sort of way. So there's a lot of people often getting underpaid, often in the global South, doing the work of filtering out all the stuff that OpenAI doesn't want us to see in the data. Right? They have to go through and they have to take out all the bad stuff, and somebody has to do that. And it's traumatic work sometimes. They're often being underpaid for that work in poor conditions. So there's another level of exploitation. I would say also the way that these technologies are being deployed is specifically, and I mean, they just say it. The goal is that we don't need humans anymore to do the work. That's the stated goal. I'm not talking about whether that's reasonable or possible or whatever, but it's the stated goal is we won't have to have people involved in these things, in decision making, in all sorts of roles. And that's being leveraged already for massive layoffs. And we've seen that. Layoffs and salary cuts, all sorts of things. There is less funding for us because our work has been stolen and it's being sold back to us. And that's being used as leverage against our jobs. And so that feels like another level of exploitation. The AI is literally used for union busting. Doesn't feel great.
Yeah. It's No, I hear that, and I hear that as someone whose background is actually in visual arts. So I I don't have a formal background in tech, so my background is actually in visual arts. And boy, am I, because I wanted to specialize in illustration, and boy, am I glad I'm not an illustrator right now. Yeah. So I had a discussion actually today on the topic of kind of tech and AI, and a lot of it was like the thing that everyone is going on now, about is like vibe coding, and I kind of almost feel like my entire LinkedIn feed is just people like hating on vibe coding. So and say yeah, but like but which kind of raised a question. I kind of started. I thought about this. I actually posted this on LinkedIn. I'm actually I have this idea of a talk or kind of just an article or something along the lines of software still sucked even before vibe coding, and I I'm wondering how to what degree it's not anything inherent about AI, but it's just like all these factors and forces that have now come to a head by means of AI and the opportunities and the possibilities in AI. But it's like we were gradually increasingly moving in this direction regardless, where effectively, like the human in tech was kind of gradually being phased out. Whether that is by means of like massive tech corporates or whatever. I like, and the thing is, like, most of us probably got involved in the web and even probably before the 2.0 web 2.0 days, and it was a very different space. But also, you couldn't really think about doing it as a job. It was just like something you messed around with and whatever. But yeah, I don't know what has happened since, and it almost feels like a lot of the reasons why I entered tech and some of the things that I found appealing about tech has kind of been co-opted. And even stuff like open source, it's like, what the hell does open source even mean nowadays? Like, look at what's going on with WordPress, a supposedly open source platform, I don't know. It's like, it just feels like everything's coming undone at once. And it almost feels like a lot of this was just the trajectory that the tech industry was on, regardless whether AI arrived on the scene or not. I don't know what people's general thoughts are on that.
I don't know if it's necessary, like that we head in the direction that you're sketching. Like if the leaders were different, I'm sure you could earn money with ethical behavior. Like it doesn't have to be this bad. They're kind of choosing to make that their goal, to replace humans and to do all of that. But I wonder if it's necessary. It seems to be necessary to be unethical to build AIs, right? You can't train a large language model. It won't be large enough if you don't steal copyrighted material, right? So you kind of have to do that. OpenAI stated that to the House of Lords in the UK. Meta didn't state it, but it was shown by The Atlantic this week that they took that data set of like some beautiful novels and like millions of novels, not some, and people's papers and stuff like that. I don't think you can build them without having that labor that Miriam talked about, like having people with low wages checking and taking out the stuff that OpenAI doesn't want to be in there. I don't think you could do it without ruining the environment either, because we need large data centers, and like a lot of these ethical problems seem unsurmountable. But the direction of like sticking AI into everything, I feel like people who are in executive positions could make different decisions about that. And there are some companies in tech that actually do that, but not many. And I wonder why. I wonder if we could change their mind. what you all think.
Yeah, I mean, the other day, something that hit me kind of. So my relationship with AI goes back and forth the whole time, and it's frustrating because it's how my brain fucks around with me most of the time. And now I have this additional thing that's messing around with me because I'm constantly going between two, not extremes, but I'm never finding a happy middle. Every time I use it, it feels dirty, but at the same time, I can't ignore it. You know, it's this kind of thing because it's part of your job. Sometimes it's expected of you. Like people can look at you and it's like, you're not using it, but you could be more, productive, blah, blah, blah. You could go faster, all these kinds of things. But then I listened to this interview with the founder, I think, of SourceGraph, and he was talking about industrializing tech. And just that phrase like hit me in a way that I had to stop for a moment and just like, whoa. And then he followed that up with a sentence that is said, people have read negative connotations into it, where people have said, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to turn every development organization into a feature factory? And I'm like, I mean, this is kind of where it's going. If you think about it, like I listened to a talk the other day where people were talking about the fact, everybody's saying 95% of all code will be written by AI. And then this person was kind of explaining what he thinks they mean by it. And it's this whole idea that C came around and less and less people were actually writing assembly. So the bulk of the code is much, much more, but most of it's actually written in C and then compiled down to assembly. So many fewer people are writing assembly. So he was taking that and positing it onto Tech Today, saying that we will have a technology that is the next level, and we will be writing in that, and that'll be the majority of it. And if you think about it, all these tools like Bolt and V0 and all these kinds of things, they've kind of found their stack. They pull in Tailwind, ShadCN, and React. And if you stick to the trifecta, it can generate just about anything for you. As soon as you throw any of those out, it completely loses it. And it can do it. Like if you just use the HTML platform, just use the HTML dialog, just use CSS. The code is pretty horrific. It's all over the place. It doesn't adhere to the same like colors and all these kinds of things. So the frightening thing is, are we going down a road where there will be frameworks or tools or languages that is created for the AI because the AI is good at that? And everybody would be expected to just rally around that. And that is your job now. The other idea that I can kind of come to grips with is the idea that we will just be code reviewers going forward, right? So the AI will get instructions, which is a specification of a feature. It'll go ahead and write it and create it, open a pull request, and you, human, will review it and give your sign off on it. And this is pretty much where we are headed. So we will not be writing the code or doing any of the creative thinking around it. We will just be the code reviewers, which is kind of like what labelers ended up being, right? We're going to give you all of this data and say, label this in a way so that when we prompt this thing, we only get the good stuff out. Label away all the bad stuff. So are we going to be labelers of code? Like, is that what it's going to end up being? I don't know. That's not what I want to do with my life, to be honest.
Who would want to do that? I wouldn't.
Nobody. And who's going to be able to do that if no one's writing code down the road? You're just going to be learning about code without the application of it as well. Like that kind of worries me. But I think more than anything, what worries me is just the fact that it leads to a lack of curiosity, in the sense that like we're not creating for creating's sake and knowing the fundamentals and the concepts behind these things. And so if all we have are loose abstractions of how the code works, I don't even know if anyone's going to be able to effectively audit that code to begin with. So there's definitely this downward pressure of code quality, but also a lack of experimentation and creativity on the web that I think, as Miriam called it in her post, this like this like grand art experiment, which it is starting to like lose its luster in that sense. And that's I think what worries me the most.
So I maybe want to ask, but I'm not sure whether I'm in the minority here, but I'm extremely skeptical, like of like these promises of AI, and then like I just can't do the math in my head that to get things to line up to where like everyone thinks this is going. I've tried Cursor, I've tried Windsurf, like it just didn't click for me. And I think a big part of that is I think a lot of the demos and stuff is like, okay, let's start with nothing. Cool. Create a to-do list for me. And it goes like, but like how much of actual day-to-day work is just starting with an empty Git repo and just, so I don't know. I'm extremely skeptical that it'll be of any real actual value in terms of replacing humans, because at some point it's gonna, if your legacy code and your just thinking about like like domain driven design and all that stuff, understanding the domain, and like at some point you like it's just going to be so much more work to explain to it what to do, to give it all the context. Obviously, if you're just like create a to-do app for me, like there's no context, there's a single sentence. If you're like, yes, there's this tech stack and it exists for 200 years now, and the previous guy did this, but there's this new service and it uses SOAP. It's not a REST API, but the current parser that we had a security vulnerability, and we had to bump up the version, but now everything breaks. Like if you go long enough, it's going to be more work to explain to it like what the problem is that you're trying to fix than just actually fixing the problem. So I think this is why I'm very skeptical, is I do think we are overstating the amount of time that you just start with nothing and you create something from a vacuum. Yeah.
This is why in my post I focused really, at least I think in my mind, on how is it, who is using it for what reasons already, and how are they leveraging what exists now? How is it already being leveraged against us? What is the damage it is doing now? It doesn't have to get better to do this damage. And I would say that's in several ways. Like from the American government perspective, it is breaking down trust in institutions, because you cannot find reliable information. It's already muddied the entire information ecosystem, right? And that's a useful thing for an authoritarian government. And from the capitalists, it is useful in selling a narrative that devalues our work. So it is already useful at that, whether or not it can do any of the things they promise in the narrative. And to me, that's sort of the focus. And I think goes back to something you said earlier, which is I don't think it's new. I feel like those ideologies existed, the capitalist ideologies and the authoritarian ideologies. They've been there. They've been in tech. They've been tied to tech. Elon didn't change. Elon just got a lot more power. Part of that happened through the way that the 1% got all the money during COVID. Part of that happened through alignment with authoritarianism that has taken power in the US. So there's various ways that power has shifted, and AI is a tool that is being leveraged by those power structures. to do the things that they want to do. And so none of it feels new to me, except for the shift in power, and the success they've had selling the narratives around AI, and leveraging those narratives against us.
That's actually a really good point. Like, and I haven't considered that, is that regardless whether, because there are a lot of people that are kind of like very knowledgeable people. Like, once again, similar to you, Miriam, I'm not, like, I'm not a data scientist. I have no formal training in this. So kind of, I can just like skim off what other people are saying. But there are a lot of people that are really skeptical on like, not only like in terms of this way of modeling AI, whether you can actually go any further than we have currently been able. There are other approaches, but this specific approach, a lot of people are saying like, this is the glass ceiling. Like, you can't, there's no going beyond this because the approach itself is limiting. But regardless whether that's the case or not, if that is perceived, if there's a perception that AI is going to replace like tech workers, then there's going to be material implications, and tech workers are going to get laid off. And then the people who laid them off is in 5 years or whatever going to realize, oh, I ruined the company. Geez, sucks to be you. I'm just going to take my golden parachute. But like, the people are making decisions based on that, regardless whether that there's any truth to that or not. Like, that's really sucks. Like, I think it would really suck if all of this pans out and people actually do get replaced by AI, and AI is building websites and coding React and like going wild and doing whatever like we do. But I think what's even more depressing is like people get let go and retrenched, and everything gets like unheaved and like disassembled and whatever in hopes of this new future, and then kind of realizing that, oh, actually this was never going to happen even. That's a depressing thought.
Yeah, but I think it's because we're thinking of it maybe in practical terms, where there's a different objective here, which is suppressing people in general by the people that has the power to do that. I mean, if you take people's jobs away, you take away a lot of their agency. The little bit they have agency over their life is taken away. And now you're having to look into this authoritarian government's eyes for your pure survival. A lot of people already experience this, where if you get sick, people are putting off going to the doctor simply because they're trading dollar for dollar. And this will get worse if they are controlling your ability to be employed or not through deploying insanely expensive machines to seemingly replace your job. Just creating the incentive there for big companies is enough for them to lay people off. I mean, I mentioned earlier the fact that where I'm at is struggling financially, and that, I mean, if you pull the thread long enough, you'll find that underlying this is AI already having these impacts. You as a tech worker, an agency, is already having to justify the price tag you put on something but why do you charge X number? Because you're just prompting an AI, right? It's just, I don't have the time to do that. You're doing that, but you can't justify this amount of money. I mean, we're constantly being bombarded by that thing. And it's going to come down to a personal level, where it's going to be, how can we justify paying you this salary when you're just prompting an AI? So it's taking away all this, the little bit of agency that the vast majority of people still have left over their lives. It's destroying that, even not with something that's really as powerful as they seem to be. And I mean, I saw this other post, I think yesterday or the day before, called a vulgar display of power, which is where, so the person who
like
found
a Metallica album or something.
something like that. But it's very apt, because they were highlighting the fact that with the latest updates to OpenAI's 4.0, they introduced this image generation thing. And there's this person that found Studio Ghibli, and they honestly hate AI. They even don't like digital art. They feel like the original making art with your hands is just, we're losing that. And he's connecting that to losing faith in humanity. And the main thing they said, and the main thing they enabled, is for the longest time with the DALL-E and those things, you couldn't really say, make this thing in the style of. One of the first things that you could do with this thing is make this in the style of Studio Ghibli. And the X platform was overflown by people just spewing tons and tons of this art in the style of Studio Ghibli. Like, if that's not a slap in the face of somebody who's opposed this, then I don't know, I don't know what is. It was just a vulgar display of power.
I did see someone very skeptic and said it. OpenAI wants to get photos of people, like personal photos, and they can't get them because of EU legislation. So they pushed for this so that everyone would upload their video or photos of their own family into this system. One thing that someone noticed on social media, and I can't remember who it was, but they said one of the things that makes Studio Ghibli so special is what they choose to put into their videos, right? What's in their animation? What do they leave out? Like, what do they choose to make their story about? And that is the bit that's obviously missing from this generator, right? If you say make it in the style of Ghibli, and you don't tell it the intentions, and like you don't think about what you're leaving out and all that, you're just doing the kind of appearance of Ghibli, right? And that is not what makes those movies so special. So it's a grand misunderstanding of, right, what this art is, as with so many of these things, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm so screwed then, because I've uploaded so many things and tried so many wacky things that my entire family is like so like captured now in that entire LLMDB. Like,
it's
like,
okay. I got a Roomba in my house. That'll track you through. It's all good.
Because like I was just like going wild. I was like taking photos of my daughters and saying like, paint this in a Renaissance like style or whatever. And then I would ask them, okay, what do you want and they would tell me, yeah, I want to have a tutu or whatever, and I'd be like, cool. Yeah, I was just going wild with that over the weekend. But
it will be used against you. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, it's too late now. I'm sorry, Mr. Robot Overlord. So, but I think so. I'm cognizant not to go too deep into like, because I do also think like at some point we also need to discuss, okay, so where to from here. But I think one thing that I find very demoralizing is that, like the whole thing about patent law and so forth was about like, oh, okay, like the reason is to incentivize people to create things, because if anyone could just take your stuff and reuse it, like patent laws are here to protect creators, and like, oh, and the fact that people like Disney and so forth abuse it, like that's just that's an unfortunate side effect. But now it's very clear that like capitalism doesn't really care about cultural generation. That was just the line that was used to peddle like corporations like being able to like come to your house and arrest you if you LimeWire a song or whatever, or like torrent music or whatever. And it was never really
download
about
JSTOR.
that. Yes. Yeah, Aaron Swartz. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, like, is that not what OpenAI is exactly doing right now? So like, it's just, I think that is just very disheartening, is that most of us were being forced to play like a game, and now that like the incentives have changed, now the rules are just like, oh yeah, the rules don't matter anymore now, after like since forever, like we had to adhere to like all these rules. But yeah, but I think like this kind of leads me, I don't want to because I think like if one talks about like what is disheartening and what is disappointing, and like this is a never ending conversation. I don't think there's going to be a logical end where we're like, cool, we've gotten all of it out now, and whew, okay. I think it just goes on forever. So I think then the question from my side is, what does one do, and also what does one do? Because I do see intersectionality between all of this. I do see intersectionality between caring about accessibility, caring about your employees, caring about your users, respecting your users, dark patterns, all of that stuff. Like it's not, you won't find a company that treating their workers like shit and is like actually like being dishonest and don't give a shit about accessibility or whatever, but then they actually are super respectful to their users. Like it's like, and I think, sorry, so where I'm going with this is I had a conversation with someone the other day where I think apparently Duolingo has kind of changed. What was that? I don't know if you guys follow that. Like, I think Jacob Nielsen also shared something or whatever. Like, they changed their user experience department or something to like. Is there anyone who's maybe able to articulate that better? But I think it's like they kind of got rid of this idea of in their naming and their kind of how they call things, this idea of kind of user or human-centered design or whatever. And a lot of people were lamenting that online, and like kind of trying to shame them for that. Like, but like I do think like at some point like that feels so futile, because it's, you're not going to shame them into, they're just following like incentives. And turns out that like pretending like the users at the core of everything and whatever was profitable for them and a nice marketing exercise, but now that the incentives have changed, it's like, yeah, that's not going to make us more money in terms of opportunity cost. And so I think there's something underneath all of this, is like, how do we as regular people in the tech industry, is there any role that one can play? Is there any effort that one can, like, can one move the needle at all? I'm curious what like you guys' thoughts are on that. Sorry, that was very jumbled, but it's a combination of having the flu and also trying to synthesize a lot of different thoughts into something, a singular thing.
I just want to use my privilege to keep showing people they're wrong, or correct, whatever. I want to use my privilege to show people that there are serious problems with the technology that they are proposing to use. And I don't think, I don't have the, I don't think that it's necessarily going to change the whole world, right? But I think it's important to say these things out loud, like Miriam did in her blog post, and then share it with as many people as we can, because I think we're with more people than we actually realize. Like, I have a friend who works on an LLM for a company I shall not name, and they sent me a frustrated screenshot the other day of a problem they were having. We were going to go to a concert together, and they couldn't get to the customer service because it was an LLM. And he was very annoyed with that. I think people working on these technologies are also not so happy with kind of how they work, and I feel like there's hope. Like, these problems are maybe going to solve themselves at some point, potentially. So it's important to keep talking about the downsides of these technologies, the kind of limits to ethics, right? We cannot push aside the ethics, and I think anyone who's aware of them needs to kind of talk about them out loud. If you're on a panel that's on AI, don't forget to mention the ethics. Like, don't just not bring them up. If you do mention it in a talk, don't forget to bring them up, and not just as a, we're putting this aside, but kind of explaining what the actual problems are, and maybe think about solutions as well. But there's not solutions for all of these things for sure, other than to stop shelving these technologies into everything. But that's not up to me to decide. But we can at least try and move the needle by talking about them out loud, and maybe thinking out loud about what potential alternatives look like.
I don't know whether I'm just becoming too cynical, maybe, but like I think I'm increasingly like getting disillusioned with the idea of trying to convince companies or people or whatever. And I think I'm at the point where I just see this as like a material issue. So when I think my approach is increasingly becoming that if I find myself in any position where I've leverage in a team, in a company, in an organization, that I'm gonna try and use that leverage for the team, company, product, whatever, to go against their own interests in the ways that I want them to. I don't think I'm going to be able to convince them to do that. So if, I'm in a very fortunate position where, senior developers are actually, like, despite everything going on, like, I would actually say senior developers are even more in demand now than they were like 5-6 years ago, and especially people with a lot of experience building like products and so forth. And so I find myself usually, especially in South Africa, because most people that gain a lot of experience with that kind of go to the States or Europe or so forth. So I sometimes do find myself in positions where, like, they really want me to work on this thing, and then I find myself in a position where I have a bit of leverage and I can go like, okay, cool, but these are the conditions, like, I'm not going to try and sell you on accessibility or whatever and tell you that it makes business sense or whatever. I'm just going to this is the line that I draw, like, these are the conditions, and these are the conditions that I'm going to give you what you want. And I'm wondering whether, like, we just need more people that are in positions like that to kind of start pushing back.
That's the thing, you have a lot of power to talk out loud also in meetings.
Yes.
Like, if you're the only one in the meeting that brings it up, that's a lot better than nobody bringing it up. I think a lot of these things get just filled because nobody asks why, or nobody kind of says we shouldn't do this for this and this reason. It's hard to be in that position, right? Because you're the negative person. That's maybe one of the things that makes it hard for my personal mental health, is that, like, I feel like I'm constantly being negative, where that's how it's perceived anyway. I feel like I'm being rational only. Like, I am quite positive towards some of these things in principle or in theory. But I feel like only the negative sides come out because there's so many of them and we need to kind of say them out loud. But like, you have a power when you're in a meeting room and people are considering making bad choices about technology, to ask questions, especially if you're more senior. Like,
but I don't know if that's a scalable solution, because, like, I don't think everyone is as abrasive as I am and willing to be a hard ass. Yeah.
But we've seen in the past labor movement scale, right? So I think part of the power that we have is organizing together. I think tech has been skeptical of that. Tech workers have been skeptical of that. I think because we have had power in some ways anyway, just because of the way our field ate the world. But I think it's good for us to realize that we are laborers and we can organize as labor, and we can build power through organization, through collective bargaining, through building alternatives. What does it look like to say, can we start our own companies that are not just built around profit motive, but are built around other ideals? instead of trying to convince some large tech company to change when they're not going to, can we put that towards refocusing on sort of the positive, by building the alternatives ourselves, by claiming our own agency, by organizing together, by not just individually speaking up in meetings, but I think this is why I think a lot about the narratives, right? It's like, I don't want to get too bogged down in arguing over whether OpenAI is right about what their tool can do. I want to talk about what are they trying to do with the narrative that they're creating around their tool. What is the thing that they're trying to sell us with that narrative, and what are the narratives that we have to push back, and how do we organize around those?
Yeah, sorry. Let me just say this, and then I've done way too much speaking, especially for someone who claims to be sick. So yeah, you guys are probably familiar with the Tech Worker Coalition. They are doing amazing work. Also, Ethan Marcotte. Is it Marcotte? How do you pronounce it, Skulk?
Yeah, it's Ethan Marcotte.
Okay, Marcotte, like a true Afrikaans person would say. He's doing amazing stuff with the unit. And I think what I really find so inspiring from what he's doing is that, he's just the regular guy who kind of really drove this idea of responsive web design, and he doesn't have any background in this or whatever, but it's just average person working in tech like you and me, being like, hey, I think this is important. And it's not someone who has a background in law or, labor law or whatever. And I find that really interesting. And I really hope those type of conversations start picking up. Because I think, once again, this intersectionality, I think, once again, once you have that, you have a bit more of a upward pressure, then you can say, okay, cool. We collectively, as people in tech, we are not going to do our jobs unless we can get some concessions in terms of caring about accessibility. No one's going to build sites. Then they're probably just going to use Upwork or Fiverr or something to replace people. But yeah, sorry. But yeah, I find that very encouraging. Let me put it this way. I find a lot of the movement around this very encouraging. And then I'll leave it there and I won't speak again.
No, I mean, it needs to be, like they say, groundswell from the bottom up. That is basically what we need. And I think we to go on the political side a little bit. And this is me from the outside looking at this and getting some really good feelings about it. What's happening in the US right now with Bernie Sanders and AOC? I mean, if you've seen the crowds they draw, and this is directly opposing the people it's going against them and calling them out, but they're putting themselves to a higher standard, and they're not doing the low below the belt stuff. They're calling them out on their nonsense, but they're doing it in a respectful manner, and that's garnering a lot more respect than trying to be as aggressive or as abrasive as the rest, because that's something I've seen with the tech bros who love AI and think it's just the coolest thing ever. If you try to oppose, they'll jump into the comments and be assholes about it. And we shouldn't sink to that level. We should hold ourselves to a higher standard and push back. But that's why I'm trying to, and this is where I often run into myself a little bit, is I'm trying to understand enough about this stuff so I can criticize it, not just as a bystander, but as somebody that can show you, here's one thing I did. Here's what I did by myself after the fact. Let's compare and contrast the two things against each other. When I did the whole played around with the new thing, the Claude Code thing in the terminal, I didn't just start from a bare project and say, build me a to-do app to see what it can do. I wrote a specification like I would for a developer in an existing project, and I gave it to Claude Code and said, okay, cool, let's go. Let's see what you can do. And the whole video is up there. And I mean, it was all over the place. Like, there's nothing that pull request sits in my repo to today because I cannot merge it. It's some of it's useful, but the majority of it is not useful at all. So my next job is to open a counter PR against that, fixing all of the things it did wrong, to show that even when you give it all the context and you give it the existing project, but all of that context in its head, it's still not that good, because that's not really what they're trying to do here. It's the narratives, like what Miriam said. That's what it boils down to. And they're spinning the narratives and cherry picking the results to make you believe it's much, much greater than it is. Every single time I've tried to use these things for something more than autocomplete on steroids, I've been disappointed. Every single time. I've not been impressed once by something it's done. And I think pointing this out in a respectful way, where it's like, I tried your thing, but look, and this is what I did, and here's my step-by-step what I did. And it's not great. If I did something wrong, show me. If it's a user error, show me where I went wrong. But this is what I did. You can see exactly what I did, and the end results is not what you claim the end results to be. This is not close to replacing anybody at this point in time. So your narratives is you're selling lies, as per usual. But they're very successful at it because they're very loud.
See, now I'm going to have to speak, and I didn't want to speak.
I was going to say, coming back to, I think it gets to one of the things that I said at the beginning, which is that one of the ways I try to protect my mental health in a eagerly authoritarian country is by looking for community where we're claiming agency. What does it look like for us to find each other and build networks and take action, and take action together? And so those are things that I look for, both in terms of changing the politics and in terms of protecting my mental health along the way. To me, a lot of it comes back to that agency and being, remembering that, I don't know, Elon's not my boss.
Yet.
And we can say no, we can push back. We might lose, sure, but we can take agency and we can say what we want. And we can work together at it. And I think that's a useful thing to remember, and to organize positively around. What do we want in the world? Can we imagine what we want from the web? And I think about, the Web Standards Project was a movement like that in a smaller way, right? It was people saying the web can be better than what it's becoming. Let's care about it. And we can do that. We can build those movements.
I love an example because it's also technology based, right? That was a technology that we collectively tried to change, and successfully, I guess, too.
I'll just say, personally, that I used to turn to the web for an outlet in troubling times like these, and I'll be honest, I just don't anymore. It feels self-defeating to play on the web like it used to, and I know several of us have talked about just the frustration of what it looks like, the web just isn't a self-expressive place anymore. And why aren't we, all doing view source anymore and experimenting and learning the ways that we used to in the Web 2.0 days? But, I think where there's already been some incredible advice here, just to say, remember, we do have power in our individual needle moving efforts. We do have individual influence. We also have communities and are able to organize and collectively move together. I'll just also say, to remember to be vigilant in your own mental health as well, and just to take care of yourself and find ways to be balanced in this tense space where your traditional tools for coping with these things may not be available to you. So you may have to be looking for alternative ways to cater to yourself. And for these types of things, me personally, I've been able to look offline for things just like Miriam's been doing with pottery. I've been doing with music, specifically with recording. Been trying to get more into actual outdoor stuff. And all that helps. But, I will be honest, it's not, it doesn't feel like the one-to-one replacement of what I used to do when I used to use a website as, we've talked about Ethan before, but, he used to call his website a worry stone, right? You can always rub on it a little bit, tweak it a little bit, and just care for it in a way that makes you feel more comforted. You may not have that outlet anymore, or you may not think that that's available to you, but there's still lots of ways to find self-help just in your local space, and it may not be online. So I just want to put a caution out there too, that we have these ways of being influential, but there's also this alienating factor to this about, that leaves us questioning, where do we fit into all of this? And sometimes we need to make sure that we're fitting in some other ways too, and finding and striking a good balance. So that we're all, caring for ourselves in this process.
Yeah, and I think also just in-person tech meetups is also a useful thing, and it's sadly that's kind of been a bit in decline, and especially as someone who used to run some of these, the new meetup.com's pricing. I don't know if anyone here runs any stuff on meetup.com. I think they increased. I'm happy to call meetup.com out publicly, but I think they were acquired and now they need to, the VCs are cashing out or whatever. But I think they increased it by 300%, their pricing. And so we just canceled ours. So we're not running that anymore, which sucks, But I do also think that's a good point, is don't become too overly reliant on finding connections and ways to deal with the stuff online. There's material things around you, like people and at your workplace and whatever, and those are also ways of organizing and building solidarity.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. This has been an absolutely great conversation. We can keep going. I mean, to add a little tail end or something just here at the end, sometimes there is still good things on the web. I have had 2 really pleasant experiences on Hachyderm, which is my entry into the Mastodon universe. But of course, it federizes and fediverses into one another. But I've had a couple of occasions in the last 2 weeks or so where I've just kind of put a question out there. I've been like, oh, wait, what? Is this how this thing works? And everybody from people I've never heard about right through to people like Leah Varu has jumped in and said, oh, no, by the way, it's this. If you look here in the spec, blah, blah, blah. And it's been like, wow, this still does happen on the web. It hasn't disappeared. And perhaps I've cultivated my own little bubble, but I'm okay with that little bubble for the moment because it's helping me stay sane. And it's helping me in those moments when I feel super alone at night, just coding away, thinking, am I wasting my time here because I'm not using this, that, and the other framework, and I'm actually writing stuff by hand? Am I just insane? And I put a question out there and people jump in and say, and is knowledgeable and interested and curious and want to help. It makes you feel good. And it's that human connection, even if it's happening over thousands and thousands of miles, is that moment that somebody that sometimes some people that I put way up on a pedestal has taken a moment out of their day to say, by the way, it's this, and here you can read more about it. It's like fucking cool. I love it. And so there is still those moments of joy we can find online, but we should definitely broaden our horizons a little bit and look beyond the metaverse and look at the real world around us, because there's cool stuff there too. And by the way, Miriam, your pottery is awesome and you should keep sharing it, because I look at each one and they're fucking cool. I really dig it.
Real timeline cleansers they are.
All right, cool. Thanks, everyone. I hope that when I'm finally healthy again and my brain is just, the neurons are firing in the correct way, that I don't listen to this. I'm like, dude, what the hell, bro? So, but luckily, like we can edit it out. Any weird?
Not at all. Jeez.
It's called being human.
Yeah, being a sick human. Thanks, guys.
That's
I really
fine, too.
appreciate this, and also like, so Hida, was nice meeting you. Also, like Jeff, Miriam, I just have so much respect for you guys. Just keep on doing what you guys are doing. Like, really, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
And keep doing what you all are doing too. This podcast is great, and I always love hearing other people's perspectives on their mental health. So keep doing it. It's great.